Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah, you really hurt me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mayor Racy,
Here.
Councilman Miller,
Present.
Councilman Porter,
Here.
Councilman Webster,
Here.
Councilwoman Skiff,
Here.
Councilman Wagner,
Here.
Councilman Dowd.
Here.
A quorum is present.
We lost a pillar of our community this week. I just want to take a moment of silence for Harold Radisky. He's the retired owner of Ute Funeral Home, a good friend of mine and a friend of many people in this community, and is going to be greatly missed. So if we could take a moment of silence for him. Thank you. Item number 1, approve the agenda.
Move to approve.
Support.
That was Councilman Webster, then Councilman Skiff. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 2, council minutes. A, rescheduled meeting of January 8th, 2019.
Motion to approve.
Support.
Second.
I'm sorry, who made the motion?
Porter and then Webster.
Thank you.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 3, presentation to former State Representative Robert L. Kozowski.
Okay. Robert, we're going to have you go ahead, and you said that you had some words that you wanted to say to us first. And
Good evening, everyone. You know, it seems like it was yesterday, 7 years ago, that I came here and tried to learn more about Wayne, even though I was from the neighboring community of Westland. So that's why I wanted to come today. It went really quick. Did my 6 years. I had the greatest time ever, but I really wanted to thank you as council people and the ex-mayors for always having my back. I want to thank Lisa for always reaching out to me on the issue. But more importantly, I want to thank all the residents of Wayne. They have been great to work with. We actually, when you can take a piece of legislation that a resident comes up with and actually run it through the whole system, that really means something. And I'm not going to name them, but they're in the crowd right now. I mean, we were up in Lansing working on this. You know, I look back at my career and I wouldn't take back anything. I wouldn't regret any move I ever made. I was able to get 17 bills passed into law. I think that's more than the entire Democratic Party involved in, in total. Plus, I was just under $1 million for grants for Wayne and Westland. So I think I did pretty well up there, but I really want to thank all the residents. I really appreciate you, and I actually love you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you, Bob. You know, and I know one of the big grants that you got for us was the Forest Park improvements that we did. That was huge, over $100,000 for that, and it's made a big difference with the baseball, and then the kids have been just elated by that. And you were also the Michigan Municipal League Legislator of the Year in 2017. Always working, you know. I know Tuesdays was difficult to get here sometimes because you were always up in Lansing. You crossed the aisle whenever you could to try to make things happen, and that was huge. And then we had residents that wanted to have yellow lights for their neighborhood watch, and you helped them find a way to make that a law. And that just doesn't happen. I mean, we had residents from our city be able to get a law passed in the state, and we appreciate everything you did for us over the last few years. You even got to swear me in, so. But with that, I just wanted to, I know you live in Westland, but you're more than welcome anytime in Wayne, and because of that, I have a key to the city. And you have a key to come back anytime you'd like. So, yep, I'd like to want to present that to you.
Don't read my tests now.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Appreciate the help.
3B, presentation regarding newly passed recreational marijuana law.
Through the chair, I'd like to welcome Steve Hitchcock. Steve is from the City Attorney's Office, and he is the expert in this area for his team. And we all know that we're being asked what we're going to do with the new recreational marijuana law. And I think that before I would even advise the council to make a decision, it would be good to hear what Mr. Hitchcock has to say with his expertise, and then allow you to ask some questions. So, Mr. Hitchcock, thank you.
Thank you. I think you've all got a copy of the letter that I did that covers this information I'm going to go over with you tonight. But as Lisa indicated, now in addition to the original Medical Marijuana Act from 2008, and then in 16 we had the Medical Marijuana Facilities Act. Now we've got recreational marijuana after the vote of the citizens. That it covers basically two concepts. One is that it allows persons who are 21 years of age and older to possess for recreational use certain amounts of marijuana and to grow certain amounts of marijuana, and they're not subject to any criminal penalties in any way for that. And in addition, the Act sets forth a number of commercial facilities somewhat similar to the previous act about the medical marijuana facilities, but it's got two new terms in there. It still has growers, it still has safety compliance facilities like we're in the other act, it still has a processor, which is in the other act. It's got a new one called marijuana micro businesses, which is really similar to the provisioning center, if you're familiar with that in the other act, except that it's on a smaller capacity, and you can also grow small amounts of marijuana as well as selling it. Then they changed the name of the processing center to call it a marijuana retailer, and then this secured transporter still exists that's in the previous law. In the last few days of the legislature, during the lame duck period, they did pass a couple of tweaks to this act that was approved by the citizens. One was that to redefine who an applicant is who's applying for one of these licenses for establishment, to say that if you own under 10% of this business and you are not going to be involved in the management, you are not subject to all the the vetting requirements of the act, such as your criminal history and all that other stuff. I think that was a attempt to say that you could have certain small ownership interest in one of these, and it's not going to matter whether you could comply if you were a large percentage owner. They did that just right at the end of the year. They also added making it a felony, I think it's on the second offense, of selling marijuana out of a facility without being licensed. It had only been a misdemeanor before. They made that a felony to raise the potential penalty if you don't get licensed. So if you want to have a facility selling marijuana or one of these other licenses, you still have to go through a process at the state of Michigan through LARA, same as the previous licenses. It's a separate license entirely, so you have to do the application process all over, even if you already have a license for a medical marijuana facility. And you have to meet all the standards of this act, and you have to identify your location also. It also allows for municipalities to opt out of having any recreational facilities in their community. You have to affirmatively opt out by an ordinance, unlike the previous law, which allowed you to do nothing, and that was the same as opting out. This one, if you don't pass an ordinance saying that you're opting out, or pass an ordinance licensing these facilities and setting your own rules on top of what the state requirements are, then someone can have a facility in your community. They can, apply for a license from the state and identify a site in your community, and you'd have to allow them to do it if you don't do anything. There's a number of things that, while the 21-year-old is protected from possession of a certain amount of marijuana, which actually you can have 5 ounces on you, you can have 5 ounces in your residence, in your possession. You can have more than up to 10 ounces if you have the remainder of it locked up in your home. You are restricted in a number of ways, just like you were in the other act. You can't operate a motor vehicle or any other kind of vehicle if you're under the influence at the time. You can't transfer any marijuana to anyone who's not 21 years of age. But interestingly, you can to another person who's over 21 without getting paid for it, compensated for it. You can transfer to them the same amount, up to 5 ounces if you want to. So you're allowed to grow 12 plants, similar to the medical marijuana, which is, by my understanding, it was much more than you would need at the 5 ounce requirement of what you can carry around with you to begin with. So there'd be quite a bit to give away if you wanted to do that. Now, but you can't consume the marijuana in any public place, but it does allow for municipalities, if they want to set aside a specific location where they want to allow the consumption of marijuana recreationally, a municipality can do that. And you can identify that in some legislation that that's a permitted place. And of course, the marijuana, similar to the other act, the marijuana you're growing has to be in a confined space that is locked, has to have fencing around it, and you're not supposed to be able to see it over the top of the fencing. So it doesn't physically have to be grown inside a building, but it does have to be contained in that way. And even if you're a passenger in a vehicle, you can't consume marijuana, even if you only have the smaller amounts and you're doing it recreationally in an operating motor vehicle. And there's a prohibition about having marijuana or consuming it or having it in or around a public school or private school. Now, interestingly, the act provides somebody who's using recreational marijuana no protection from the employment situation. So while you can consume it on your own, in your own property, an employer can still have a zero tolerance policy if they choose to. And if you test positive, you can be terminated from your employment. Again, I guess assuming you don't have a collective bargaining agreement that provides some additional protection to you, but there's no obligation for an employer to accommodate in any way the recreational use of marijuana. So you certainly can't do it on their premises. But even if you are tested and you're positive, it can be a problem for you. And marijuana is a particular problem because the metabolites of marijuana stay in your system for a long period of time after you consume it, up to 30 days. So it'll show up in a urinalysis test up to that period of time after you've last consumed the marijuana. So you theoretically could be on vacation 3 weeks ago, had a marijuana cigarette, and then something happens at work and you get tested and you're positive, there's a zero tolerance policy, you can have a problem. I think it's to be seen how long that lasts and whether the legislature doesn't do something about that in the future, but that's going to become a serious problem. I saw a statistic the other day from Concentra, who I think most of you know. Concentra does a lot of testing for employers, pre-drug testing before hiring. And in Colorado, they're running about a 23% failure rate now. People applying for jobs get tested and are tested positive for marijuana. So that's be seen whether or not in the employment market that we're in today, whether employers are going to have to change their habits on that or not. We have one company that I just was working with that decided to amend it a little bit and say that if you test positive in a urinalysis, if you immediately consent to a blood test and the blood test is negative, then you're okay, and that's what the policy says. But if you refuse to do the blood test, then the urinalysis results are going to stand for purposes of the company policy. The reason for that is that it's only in your bloodstream for 10 and 12 hours. Property owners do not have to in any way allow for the smoking of marijuana on their premises. And so if they're renting to you, even though you have the amount that's allowed under the law for recreational consumption, you can't consume it on the property of your landlord unless the landlord consents to that. And of course, you couldn't grow the marijuana if your landlord doesn't consent to it either. It's going to take quite a while for any facilities to get into play because the LARA, the State Department that is regulating this under the Act, is giving a whole year to actually begin accepting applications from when it became effective, which was December 6th. So they've got until December 5th of this year to even begin accepting any applications, and they haven't developed any of the regulations yet. So my guess is they're going to probably take the whole year if how they've handled the marijuana with regards to the medical marijuana facilities is a standard of how they're going to operate with regards to these facilities. It's very slow. I haven't looked at it in a couple of weeks, but about 2 or 3 weeks ago, they had only approved about 20-some licenses in the state, and that was late in 2016 when that act was passed. This act does say that they're going to have to speed up the approval rate because they have to approve them within 90 days of when they receive a fully completed application. So you can expect that there's going to be a lot of applications in on the first day, and that within 90 days of that, so there will be some applications being approved already. The next big thing that they did, again, is similar to the previous act. There is a tax on marijuana facilities, actually the retail sale of them. that's going to be similar to the previous act, although in this case it's a higher percentage of tax. The problem with it is it provides that until 2022, like $20 million of the tax has to go to this drug research through the programs through the Food and Drug Administration, sponsored through some nonprofits to do investigative research. And so not until after that amount has been paid is there going to be any distribution to any of the communities. And the municipalities who have a marijuana retail store or micro business can get up to 15% of the tax collected, and it's not totally clear in the act how that's going to be divided. It wasn't clear in the previous act either whether or not that means that you get 15% of the 10% gross tax on the entire revenue of the ones that are in your community, or whether they're going to take all of the revenue and divide it by the number of facilities that exist, so that the tax reimbursement gets spread evenly back to the communities based on the number of facilities you have. It's not defined in the act at all as to how the Treasury is going to do that. And of course 15% goes to the counties of that, and then 35% goes through K to 12 education, 35% goes to Michigan Transportation Fund for repair and maintenance of the roads. And that, the other thing I wanted to point out to you is that it also says that during the first 12 months of issuance of licenses, so that would be 24 months from December of 18, really. The first 12 months, they're not going to be receiving any applications. And then for the 12 months after that they issue them, the first licenses have to go to those applicants who already have a license for a medical marijuana facility. So they're going to get first choice at those licenses. Whether or not they issue any licenses after that is somewhat up to the state on deciding whether or not they think there's a saturation of the market by that point in time or not. So that's kind of why there's been a big effort to get up and running with some medical marijuana facilities, because you're going to be, if you've got one of those, you're going to be first in line to apply for a recreational license, which you can operate out of the same facility under the act. What is not clear in this act is whether a community such as yours that has granted some licenses for medical marijuana facilities, if you were to completely opt out of any recreational facilities and one of your applicants or one of your licensees for one of the medical marijuana facilities were to then apply for a recreational license, can they still get it in spite of the fact that you opted out of recreational marijuana because of this provision in the act? That's probably going to be the subject of some litigation, because in one place in the act it seems to say you completely have the right to totally opt out of participating in this if you want to, but then later they say that those facilities that are licensed under the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act are going to have first choice at these, and that they can co-locate. So you can expect that there could be some debate over that and likely litigation over that. The one other thing that they clearly put in the act is the right for initiative petitions by citizens with regards to whether or not there's going to be any medical marijuana facilities. And it says specifically that they can have initiative petition to opt out or to regulate the number of facilities in the community. So we've got one community where there was an initiative petition under the previous act that was passed by the voters. So they're being forced to have facilities under the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act because of that. And the thing that's unsettled under that provision also is if you've previously opted out as a legislative body, is there a right for initiative petition to override your opt-out? It doesn't specifically say that in the act that they can. It names two specific ways you can have initiative petitions. It says one to opt out of it or to set restrictions on them. So that's probably going to be litigated, and we might even have that case because we got one community that's in the process of adopting an opt-out. They've had a first reading of it, and somebody's brought forth an initiative petition that they've delivered to the clerk already to opt in with no limitations. So that's going to likely be a litigated point. So that is kind of the gist of the act without taking your whole night up. And if you have any specific questions now, I'm happy to answer them. And I laid it out in a little bit more detail in the letter I gave you. And of course, the act itself is public record. If anybody wants, I've got copies of it. If anybody wants it, Lisa can let me know. I can get you copies. If you want to just read the exact legislation, because I know everybody, whichever way they voted on it, never read the entire act that they were voting on. And all you saw was the 100-word blurb that was on the ballot language, which is much smaller than this is, 21 pages long.
Do you have any questions from council?
One question. And I do apologize if you said this and I missed it, but if a community opts out, does that mean it only prohibits the sale of it within that community, or does that mean it prohibits the recreational use of marijuana?
Good point. I didn't make that point. You can't prohibit the recreational use of it. You're just opting out of the commercial facilities, right?
Yeah, Mayor. Also, in your opinion, will Lara actually get through this in 1 year? Because it's my understanding if they don't, and we do not opt out, then it goes to the municipality to approve the licensing.
Right.
And this is something I don't want to do as a small municipality that's already hurting for money. We don't want to go through having to go through extra licensing things.
Right. Yeah, as I indicated, they got the year before they have to accept them. But then once they're required to start accepting them, they've got 90 days on those when they get them to prove or deny them. And if they do nothing in that 90 days, then that applicant can come back to the community and ask them to allow them to have a license, and you'd have to deal with that. And then that license is good for, once you grant it, it's good for the year, and so the state would be out of regulating that particular facility for that whole next year, you know.
Any other questions from council?
Through the chair. Has the Attorney General's office made any opinion about what has been passed and what liability the state would hold by passing this, or municipalities?
Not that I'm aware of.
Do they plan to, or they're just going to stay out of it?
I mean, if there's some of the few points I raised here that there's some ambiguity, someone may make a request to the Attorney General to have an opinion on how that should be interpreted, since it's a state law now and that's their jurisdiction to do that. I wouldn't be surprised if some legislature later some other state official makes a request for an opinion on those points.
Mayor Racy, through the chair. Can we opt out on certain pieces of the marijuana legislation? Or if we opt in, we have to accept all the various components of it?
No, it's similar to the previous act where you could opt in and opt to allow some of these facilities and not others if you wanted to. You can set the numbers that you want. As long as you don't conflict with the act itself, some provision that it has as a criteria, and then there's some language about it. It has to be reasonable in any kind of a regulations you want to put on it at the local level yourself. You certainly can do that.
And you indicated that it could be quite some time before we really be able to gauge the finance revenue from facilitating these facilities in the community as well.
Correct. Because you're looking at the 1 year delay before they do any, and then in the first 2 years, until they've collected $20 million to go to this research project, nothing is going to any of the municipalities. And I don't know how long how long is it going to take to do that? I don't know. How many facilities are there going to be selling them, and how many buyers are there going to be? The only statistic I've ever seen on that is in Colorado again. There was a statistic that they said that the average recreational buyer was spending $3,000 a year. I can imagine that on buying marijuana. So, and you'll still will have some people that'll elect to buy marijuana through the medical marijuana facilities. One, if they're under 21 and they have a medical marijuana card, that's what they would have to do. And secondly, the tax is lower on that, so they may try to buy it that way too.
Mayor Racy, through the chair. I've got to ask this. Is there any provision regarding a matter of actually purchasing marijuana online? There's
no provision in here for doing that. There is some rules now that they've just developed for the medical marijuana state that says that a facility that's selling it can have a number where you can call in or a computer where you can make your order and they will deliver it to you at your site, and there has to be an arrangement for payment ahead of time because the drivers aren't supposed to be carrying cash, making change and carrying cash around. So to that extent, you're not exactly buying it online and having it shipped to your house, but you could have home delivery of it by the facility that's you're calling into to order it. And I suppose they're probably going to do the same thing for recreational too, I would imagine.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's go ahead and move the agenda.
Item 3C, City of Wayne audit presentation.
Katie.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. You have in front of you a copy of our 2018 financial audit. There's also an electronic copy available on our website, cityofwayne.com, under the financial dashboard. Our auditor's opinion in the audit was an unmodified opinion. That's the highest level of assurance that an auditor can provide. The statements are clear and accurate is what that's saying, and that's on pages 1 and 2 of the audit if you want to read it later. The internal controls, we had no material weaknesses and no significant deficiencies, and that's really great. For compliance, we just had one minor budget item noted. Legal was over budget by $5,524. That's on page 53 if you want to take a look later. So this is a really positive report on our financials as far as them being presented well. It doesn't mean that we're doing financially well. Our fund balance increased by approximately $300,000. If you take a look on page 12, you'll see the net change in fund balance is where you can see that increase. In 2017, including the OPEB trust, the fund balance decreased by $517,000. So we did much better this year. And why was it better? Well, we had a one-time payment from the LCSA for $656,000. Sale of the fire truck for $450,000. Sale of the Wayne Activity and Banquet Center for $189,000. We had several one-time grants, several open positions that weren't filled, and DPW, Water and Sewer and Streets was able to shift any costs that they did. Well, DPW was able to shift any costs they did for Water and Sewer and Streets to those funds instead of having it just come out of the general fund. Also tightening up on overtime and limiting our capital outlay. The really great news on our financial audit is seeing our unfunded legacy costs come down. Our net pension liability was $43,682,132. The OPEB went down to $5,863,865, which is a $80 million decrease compared to what our liability was before. You can see that on page 40 of the audit. Dividing that by the population of Wayne, that's a per capita of 2,816, which last year's audit it was 7,588. So there's been a dramatic decrease in the OPEB liability, mainly due to the changes in retiree health care. Our pension system is funded at 66.88. So our legacy costs have decreased overall by 63%. And that's the end for the audit presentation portion.
Good evening. My name is Brian Kamler. I'm a partner with Plant Moran, and we have been serving the city of Wayne for the last 4 years. With me tonight is one of our managers, Carrie Shea. She and I will be going over the rest of the slides. Let's not gloss over or go too quickly over the point of the last several slides. This is a very big deal. Compared to where you were several years ago, you're night and day different financially in the general fund and across all funds due to the changes in retiree health care. Some of the slides going forward, we'll be talking about where you're at now compared to where we thought you were going to be, and look at some trend data. But just that monumental decrease to the retiree health care liability is a fundamental change to how you're providing that remaining benefit. But also it's the latest and greatest and largest change that you've made. And I acknowledge completely what a difficult decision that was for the city. It took a lot of courage for the city to be able to do that, but it was absolutely necessary. And one of the ways that you can tell that that was necessary is from this particular graph. Now, if you've seen me or heard me present to the city over the last 4 years, you've seen this graph before. I believe it was in either the first or second presentation that I ever made to City Council. So it hasn't, this particular graph has not been updated since that 2015, but the point remains the same. So this city never had an expenditure problem. It had a revenue problem. The revenue that you're most dependent on, obviously, is property taxes. And beginning with the Great Recession, your taxable value plummeted to the point that even still, you're taking in $6 million less per year in property taxes than you were back in 2009. So back in, it was in 2015, we were looking at 2014, and up to that point, you had lost $26 million compared to what you would have had the market not tanked. Rolling that forward to today with another 4 years at $6 million a year, you're looking at $50 million that you didn't take in over that 8 or 9 years. That is a tremendous loss. The fact that you're still sitting here and now have a surplus in your fund balance for fiscal year 18, quite honestly, is a minor miracle. And it's due to the hard work of a lot of people, current and previous members of council, current and previous mayors, current and previous department heads, employees, and quite frankly, the citizens that have gone along with so many things that had to change. So when we talk about fund balance, so this is a revised graph. Every year I bring this back and update, and I actually went back a little bit further because I want everyone to see where you were at in 2013 and just how far you fell, and now, fingers crossed, have bounced. So you go back to 2013, and this is prior to my team being here. But you had general fund balance of about $1.5 million. That's the blue piece. There was quite a bit of money. There was over $3 million saved for OPEB. And then you also had these internal service funds. And what an internal service fund is, it's a fund within the city that services other funds throughout the city. When times were good, the city would push money to the internal service funds. And they would take care of the DPW was housed in one, and there was insurance funds, and it's all worked, or it all services the efforts of the city. But when you have these internal service funds and you're pushing money there, and then you pull it back for certain things, the picture gets muddy. And what we ended up doing between fiscal 14 and 15 is we eliminated the internal service funds. Now, all of that gray piece, that didn't all go to general fund. Some of it went to water, some of it went to the road funds. But the point is that you had a lot more then. And then once we closed out, so when we came in at the end of calendar 14, so December of 2014, you were already mid-free fall. And I don't know that everyone in the city knew it at that point. So we made some modifications to the budget, eliminating those internal service funds so that you didn't have this constant push-pull of money. We wanted everything in one pot so we could really measure it and know whether the pot was increasing or decreasing, although we knew at the time it was decreasing. So then the internal service funds were gone, and then you had to start using the OPEB money to get through the years. And all of that OPEB money was spent to pay for retiree health care. So it was correctly utilized for its intended purpose. Would we have liked to have it extended a longer period of time? Absolutely, but we didn't have that option. And so up until 2017, you were still using up your fund balance. So now here we are at the end of fiscal year 2018, and you did have $300,000 increase, which is marvelous. But as one of my retired partners used to say, 1 year is not a trend. 2 years usually isn't a trend either. We need multiple years of repeated excellence before you can wipe your brow and say, good, it's passed. We're not there yet. But at the same time, you really do need to pat yourselves on the back, everyone across the city, because in order to get that bounce, a lot of things had to happen. So since 2014, some of the most significant changes are on this list. And I think getting an understanding of your budget may be the most important piece, because 4 years ago, there was still argument to be had as to whether or not you were increasing or decreasing your position. And once the budget was cleaned up and it went from 180 pages to 60 some, and it took a lot of education thereafter, but I think, you know, by 2 years ago, everybody was on the same page and understood what direction the needle was pointing. The closing and then eventually outsourcing of the recreation center to HYPE was a very big deal as well. At one point, recreation was costing the city over $1 million a year. And now you still have debt service on the building, you're still paying for insurance on the building, and there's still an administrative fee that HYPE gets. But net, it's down to a couple $100,000 instead of $1 million. Healthcare, recently, we haven't seen the change of the stipend yet, financially speaking. It happened 2 weeks ago. But it's been a work in progress for several years. At one point, you became self-insured, which means that you have to pay Blue Cross, and now you're not with Blue Cross anymore, but you have to pay your insurance company less up front. You're paying as claims are incurred, which keeps money in your pocket longer until you have to pay. The other way, the insurance company was holding on to some of your money. And by changing the arrangement, you were actually able to walk away from several $100,000 that you did not have to pay. Totally above board, but that's just the way that the system works. And then just other plan design changes. Capital outlay, delaying things, not buying equipment when you can still squeeze a little bit of life out of the existing. That saved the city a lot of money. Now it also means that the employees have to get by with not the best in terms of vehicles or technology or heavy equipment or tools. They're getting by with what they have, and we're only replacing things when they absolutely have to be. You can only do that for so long. At some point you have to put money back into these things. The SAFER grant that helps fund the fire department, that's been huge. Other grants, the money that Mr. Kozowski was able to raise, other grant programs, that has helped. The fact that you've gone from, and forgive me, I don't know the numbers offhand, but your workforce is dramatically smaller than it was 10 years ago. The people that remain are doing the work of 1.5 or 2 or 3 people. And it's taxing on them, and they're making that sacrifice for the city. But you haven't had any choice. You've had to remove those positions and keep them open. And then just the last point, and I've said it several times, but every person that is involved in the city in some way, shape, or form has been making sacrifices in order to get to this point, and they should be duly recognized. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carrie, and then I'm going to bounce back in a couple times.
Thanks, Brian. So Brian really kind of took a path through what's happened up until now. And so if we start looking at what did fiscal year 2018 really land at? So in your general fund, you ended with a little over $3 million. And of that amount, you have about $1.2 million, I believe, that's unassigned, which means it's no restrictions. You can use that for whatever you want. So the big question is, like, what's the magic number for that amount? What is everyone aiming for? So for a very long time, if before the recession, you would hear, 15 to 25% is kind of the magic number. The reason that 15% is the lower end is that really looks at, if you take 2/12 of a year, or 2 months, that's about 16%. So that's where that lower amount is. If all the revenue stopped coming in the city, you would have 2 months to cover. That's pretty much where you're sitting right now. You're at about 18%. So to Brian's point, it's great effort to get you to where you were from where you're from, but you're really at the minimum of what's recommended. We have cities now where I'm seeing that are pushing that 15 to 25 up to 40% in some cases, just anticipating there may be another point where that recession hits again. Those revenue streams aren't bouncing back and feeling that they need to have a larger pool there. Oops. So the question is, do we have enough? So if you look forward to the 2019 budget, currently there is a loss or use of $1.8 million of fund balance, which exceeds that amount I just mentioned in your unassigned. That is before the stipend. So we will have a better idea as we move through the next budget amendments where that will be positioned. So the intent will probably be you should finish much better than budget. We just don't know how much better at this point. So as Brian had mentioned, there were things that helped build that fund balance. So there's been a lot of delay of capital and things like that. At some point, those will have to be addressed on a bigger basis. And so emphasizing that that minimum is great, but you need to continue to achieve to move higher so that you can work on some of those projects. Other things will also be happening. So your SAFER grant's going to be expiring. That'll be a decision point, but that could be an additional cost to the city on that piece. And then also thinking through any other projects in that could be coming down the road, and the fact that your pension costs continue to increase. So that will also continue to, threaten the expenses within the general fund.
So somewhere along the line, this gentleman who Lisa named Jeeves became the mascot of the budget process. Can't see it because of the cross out, but his pockets are empty, or they're pulled out, and he's like, hey, I got nothing left. And that's where we thought you were going to be. I mean, at one point 2 or 3 years ago, we were expecting you to be, if nothing else changed, you were going to be $5 million in the hole. The fact that you have $3 million today is fantastic. You did that on your own. Twice the city requested from the state of Michigan, please come help us. Please take some of this over. And they said no. They said, you haven't pulled all the levers yet that are available to you. And so you're really not at rock bottom until you do those things. And that was enough of a motivation that's when the city took on some of these larger tasks like the stipend. So you've done this on your own, and I think you're better for it. You took control of your own destiny. Now, I've chosen the words on this slide very carefully. So the city has stabilized its financial position. When I say stabilized, I mean you're not free-falling anymore. That doesn't mean that it's not a time for caution, and it doesn't mean that you couldn't quickly fall back into that pattern if you don't make the good decisions. Challenges remain. Carrie just mentioned the SAFER grant, which is going to expire and hopefully, fingers crossed, can be renewed. If not, we have to replace that revenue somehow. And I believe we're in year 3 of a 7-year plan from MERS about raising your pension contribution by $500,000 every year. So we're still going to have those costs. Those have not stabilized. Pension is going to keep going up. And that's not for current employees. That's predominantly for the people that have already retired. Your funding is just over 60%, which just barely is across the threshold for the state declaring that to be a problem. A year ago, it was like 59.5. So you were just making it over the threshold in the past year. Things that have been delayed for years, whether that is equipment or technology or facilities or whatever, these things that have not been addressed for years, out of necessity, they have to be addressed at some point. At some point, you can't slap another coat of paint on something, or you can't repair a vehicle one more time. At some point, these things need to be replaced. Some money has to go back into them. And I think now that you're at this stable position, even though you do know that there are still some big boogeymen out there, you do have the ability now to say, all right, we're going to be strategic, and we're going to pick some of the things that we can get the most impact out of. That needs to happen. The last paragraph, so if another recession hits, and by all indications, it has to happen at some point, it's always a curve. It goes up, it comes down. It's been up for a long time. If the real estate market has a downturn or a hit anywhere near what it was before, Unfortunately, you don't have the same levers available today that you had back in 2010. You don't have another rec center to close. You don't have another retiree health care to turn into a stipend. It could end up being more difficult in the next 10 years than it was in this past 10 years. But we know that now, and so you have to keep your eyes on the prize. Good news is that you do have, while it's not in general fund, you do have some ability to do some things in other funds. Carrie's going to talk about that now.
So we live in Michigan, so the roads are always a concern, and so two of your key funds are your major and local street funds, which both did have surpluses this year of $200,000 and $540,000 respectively. So your fund balance in major streets is a little over $500,000, and you're at about $2.2 million in local streets. So with those surpluses, it indicates that you are bringing in more than you're spending. So while the city may not be able to undertake very large road projects, it is appropriate to look at what the needs are out there and using some of that fund balance, or at least what's coming in each year, to address some of those more urgent needs. Water and Sewer Fund is also a key fund of the city. Short-term indicators are positive. Cash increased about $1.8 million to $7 million this year, but some of those long-term factors are still in existence. So you still have legacy costs that we've mentioned many times tonight. Those total about $3.6 million for that fund. And obviously the water and sewer is a system, so historically it's been well maintained by the city, but it is continuing to age. And so the water and sewer rate model that you've put in place over the past few years has been very beneficial and helped create a positive unrestricted net position of $5.2 million, which used to be negative. So the city's really done a great job to build that up. There are things, though, that will need to be addressed with projects, and so as you continue to have the rates in place to help build that fund balance, again, you can look here to say what are upcoming projects that we need to undertake, and the funds are starting to be available to you to be able to make those updates. And lastly, we wanted to highlight, so we created a new fund this year for the youth grant program and transferred the $398,000 of unspent grant funding into that fund. That's been accumulating over time. It is restricted and it can only be used for youth assistance, but it'll be easier for you to track and be very visible for you in this fund now. But this can be used, so if there's new projects or expansion of projects, this is available to you to be used for those purposes.
All right, so just to wrap up, thanks to the hard work of everybody in order to make 18 a successful year, but it was also the years leading up to 18 that made 18 possible. After several years of hardship and some very hard decisions, you're in a good place. You're in a better place than what we would have anticipated several years ago. But it's not a time to say, hey, victory is ours, and now we can go back to what used to be normal. That's not going to happen anytime soon. It's going to continue to be a struggle. But you're in such a better spot than where anybody had really any right to guess where you would be just a short few years ago. And while you do not have the financial resources to address all of your delayed needs, you do have some money in these pockets that we've highlighted that will allow you to take some of these programs forward. It's not enough for everything, and some of that money is restricted for particular purposes, but at least you can apply those resources to those particular purposes and make some significant headway on them. General fund, doesn't have the same ability that the water and sewer fund has, but at your level of fund balance and with the stipend kicking in now, you do have some ability to reinvest in portions of the city or certain departments or just overall infrastructure. And it's going to be up to the council, along with management and the rest of the administration, to prioritize the list and be strategic. Not every purchase at the same dollar amount gives you the same impact. So you need to go through and say, well, what can we spend and what kind of bang for our buck can we get? And then make good decisions to put that money to good use. That's what we have for you tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Brian. I just want to say thank you for all you guys' work in this too. You guys did a great job since you've been here. It has made a big difference in the city. And I do agree with you with our administration, our staff, our council, our residents, everybody, and our retirees, everybody taking and being part of this to make this happen has made a big difference. When I got on council, it was bad, and it was really bad, and couldn't even approve a budget for the first 3 years because you could tell how bad it was. So I can't believe we're headed to where we're at. It's amazing. So I appreciate everything that you've been a part of.
Well, thank you for allowing us to be a part of this journey with you.
Okay, any questions from council? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 4, request 4A, declare February as Black History Month in the city of Wayne.
Move to approve.
Support.
Could you read the declaration, please?
Whereas the month of February is officially celebrated as Black History Month, which dates back to 1926, when Dr. Carter G. Woodson set aside a special period of time in February to recognize the heritage and achievements of Black Americans. And whereas the history of Black Americans is a story of extraordinary individuals whose achievements have set examples for the citizens of all races. And whereas, while the history of Black Americans is also the story of countless nameless heroes brought to our shores who endured lives of bondage and oppression, the deprivation of their civil rights, and the ravages of bigotry and racism, it is a history for which most of the chapters have yet to be written as Black Americans continue to contribute to the American promise. Now, therefore, I, John P. Racy, Mayor of the City of Wayne, on behalf of the City Council and citizens of Wayne, do hereby proclaim February 2019 as Black History Month and urge all citizens of the City of Wayne to recognize the contributions that African Americans have made not only in the city but in our country's history.
Thank you, Eileen. Thank you, Councilman Miller, for bringing this to our attention. Make sure we had this on here. So, thank you for that. Is there any comments from the council? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 5, ordinances and amendments. 5A, approve the second reading and publication of Ordinance 2019-1 regarding the repeal of Chapter 297 Recreation Foundation.
Motion to approve.
Support.
Any discussion?
And that was Councilman Porter and Councilman Webster.
Yes, I'm sorry. Any discussion? Any discussion from the audience on this item? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 6, appointments to boards, commissions, and committees. 6A, approve the reappointment of Willie Coleman to the Board of Review until 2020.
Motion to approve.
Support.
That's Mayor Pro Tem Porter, Councilman Webster. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
6B, approve the reappointment of Albert D'Amicio to the Board of Review until 2020.
So moved.
Support.
Again,
Councilman Wagner. That was Councilman Wagner.
Thank you.
Councilman Webster. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
6C, approve the reappointment of Deborah Wass to the Board of Review until 2020.
Move to support. I'm sorry, move to, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Who was the supporter?
Councilman Skiff and then Mayor Pro Tem Miller.
Councilman Skiff was easy.
Yep. Councilman Porter.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Porter, I'm sorry.
Same difference.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
An addendum 6D to approve the reappointment of Lois Van Stipdonk to the Wayne Library Board until 2024.
Move to approve.
Support.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Did you have something?
Mayor, yeah, I did have a comment, and Lois has been elected to the position of president of the board, I do believe. Am I correct? So congratulations on that also. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you.
Item 7, communications and reports. 7A, December 31st, 2018 revenue and expenditure report.
Wish of council.
Motion to approve.
Second.
That was Councilman Wagner on the second, right? Yeah. Yep.
That was Councilman Miller that supported that?
Wagner.
Thank you.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
7B, investment report for the city of Wayne.
Receive and file.
Is there support for that?
Support.
Support.
Thank you.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 8, general items for consideration. 8A, approved change order number 1, final with Alltech doors for additional work at the former Building and Engineering Building, 4001 South Wayne Road, in the amount of $700 to be paid from the proceeds of the sale of the building.
Move to approve.
Support.
Okay. That was Councilman Miller.
Thank you.
And it's a toss-up between Mayor Pro Tem Porter and Webster, so you could pick either one.
Got it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
8B, approved change order number 1, final with Great Lakes Contracting for the 2018 sidewalk removal and replacement project in the amount of, to the credit, $7,480.88 to be credited to the Road Millage Fund.
So moved.
Support.
That was Councilman Wagner, Mayor Pro Tem Porter.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 8C, approve the appointment of Gianmarco Mullins and Horton from Troy, Michigan to provide legal services and serve as city attorney.
Good evening.
Mr. Mayor, good evening, members of council. John Clark.
Excuse me, we do need a motion before there's any discussion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Good evening again.
Good evening. Again, John Clark, senior partner, Gianmarco Mullins and Horton. We greatly appreciate this opportunity we've had since September. I think it's been a fabulous relationship. Working with not only the city manager, the department heads, council, mayor, interacting with the citizens, the courts. I think it's really been positive for both. We appreciate the consideration tonight of council appointing us on a permanent basis. Personally, I think it's the right move and would request your full support in that regard. And I would happy to answer any questions that anybody may have in regards to your potential decision.
Okay, do I have any questions? Yep. Mayor Pro Tem.
I would like to ask if your firm has ever had or conducted any business with any other, let's say, council people, the administration, on a personal or a business basis? To your knowledge, I know that you're...
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else on the council have any questions?
Mayor Racy, as chair, I'd like to ask the attorney. My concern is in pertaining to the billing process. Last month, I requested, as part of the client privilege group, in regards to the billing that occurred in the month of September. Okay, on September 4th, this council approved for the intern services of your firm. We also approved the release of a assessment report. I wanted to verify some of the charges of that month. Okay, I spoke with your colleague as well, trying to retrieve, to verify the expenses that were incurred by the city, to the city. I had also tried to identify what purposes they were. try to ensure that we are not using the legal services for duplication of opinions. I didn't really get a connection with what I saw on the billing voices, and then when I got the responses from your colleague to solidify the charges that were applied to the city. I am asking that, and another thing is too, is that as a client, that we should be able to see what we're being billed for, what the opinion was, who requested it, etc. And it was things just weren't itemized, clear, you know, so that I can have the confidence that, you know, the charges that we're paying for, we can verify. Is there any other information that you would need into inquiring about my concern about the billing?
I understand your concern, Councilman. It's always a very fine line between the amount of detail placed in a bill, because, again, that's the attorney-client relationship. Certainly, if more detail is requested, we can certainly do that without a doubt. That was the first month of our billing with this community. Some communities, I just send a summary, literally a summary of the month. Some like it broken down into each and every category. I can do either way. I'm here at your disposal. I'm here to serve not only the city, but the council and the mayor and the city manager. In terms of being able to review bills, again, you're absolutely entitled to review bills. The issue is when you start, and I believe there was a request for not only our invoices, but the other previous law firm and another law firm, which over a 12-month period could amount to several hundred pages of documents. If someone were to FOIA those and take them out of here, those would have to be redacted. And so we thought that it would be appropriate if members of council wanted to review bills, certainly you can review them. If you want to take them with you, it's really no different than anybody else who wanted to come in and get the bills. So it's an issue of confidentiality. It's an issue of while we want to be certainly transparent, we certainly have the client's interest to protect. And so it's our obligation to make sure that that happens. But I understand your concern, sir. We will certainly double down if more detail is required. We are absolutely willing to do that without a question. And in fact, I believe we have done that in the last few billings and working with Mr. Bosnick and others that have been assisting with this client.
See, the concern that was raised was that you started service on September 4th, and we didn't really receive, this is probably one of our first times that we've used a contract with our previous, we did not use contracts with previous attorneys. Speaking to the chair, to the city manager. Is that my understanding?
That is correct.
So we did go ahead and facilitate this contract with you. It wasn't signed till November 1st, okay? There's a clause in the contract 2B that refers to the fact that if there's any discrepancies of any of the billing that that we had received, that during that grace period we would be able to address. We didn't have that opportunity as a client, and if I had been able to at least been made abreast of the decisions that were made.
Well, let's let him go ahead and finish. And are you finished, Tony, or are you still?
Well, I just wanted to finish. What I'm trying to convey to you is that in that month of September, I was trying to identify what we were paying out for, okay? And when I asked a little bit more deeper information, some of the explanations of those dates changed. Some were not charges, but yet on the voice billing that I looked at, it had increments of time alongside of it. It had a generalization of explanation for it, but not specifically. Okay. There was, in case of the September 5th, we and because of the timeline of incidences that occurred on September 4th and September 5th, in particular with the report. We had already paid for a decision regarding that report. Overnight, another decision was weighed in, and I assume it was the new law firm regarding that matter, but it didn't coincide with the invoice billing that was presented to me. And then it was further explained that there was no charge at all. So it just seems a discrepancy of information that I'm receiving and being able, and I'm entitled to understand and know what the taxpayers are being paid for, charged for. We had an exuberant amount of services in that particular month of September for multiple reasons. It also folds down into November 6th, 7th, also November 20th. Just as an examples, that there was some discrepancies of clarification that I could not confirm reason for those fees. And I think it's reasonable for me as a client in that group to ask those questions.
I agree.
Mr. Mayor, we're certainly fine with any questions that are asked. As council is well aware, I believe sometime the second week or thereabouts of January, we received a request from Mr. Miller to amplify or provide further details on various, I think there are 10 or 12 itemized dates going back to September. I made the effort of going back, looking at my calendar, looking at various documents, putting together emails, and tried to provide that clarity to Councilman Miller. And I did provide clarity in each of those dates, and I did email that to Councilman Miller and the entire council. So I guess to the implication that we're somehow not being candid or not being forthright in our billing, I think that's not the case. And I think the council would agree, as we've been very transparent and provided everything to the council. So that's all I have to say on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Racy, to the chair, to the attorney's law firm, then I would not have had any problem in understanding what we were charged for if that was the case. I believe that going forward, that our billings should have an itemized, just as I would, as a resident, reviewing my water bill or any other bill that I receive in the mail as to what I'm paying for. It's as simple as that. And then we can all be on the same page as a working partner with the attorney.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Absolutely.
And that's all I'm asking.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's very reasonable as a client.
I completely agree with you, sir. I completely agree.
I find it, you know, it's despairing, you know, and it concerns me is that if we're not keeping track of what we're requesting, are we requesting duplications of the same concerns? Paying double for the same information? So we got to keep track of these things, and I think it's very important as a municipality in accountability in those manners.
Do we have any other council members that have questions? Anybody?
Thank you very much.
Mr. Blackwell. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I just had a question. To my understanding, is this going to be under a contractual services agreement?
Yes.
Okay. Now the big question is the $50,000 question. According to section 6.12, attorney functions and duties, the contractual services agreement, if it's approved by council tonight, that will comply with the charter, correct?
Yes.
So it'll, just as it says here in the charter, that the city attorney serves solely and exclusively to the mayor and council only, correct?
Yeah, but the council has them work with our city administration. That's what the council tasked.
Right, but what I'm saying is if it's approved, it's still going to be complying with the charter where it says that the attorney serves solely to the mayor and council. I want to say, I guess, represents the mayor and council only. Is that what I'm to be understanding?
I would, yes.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
And I want, you're fine. I just want to say, I think it's great that our administrator realized that we have never had a contract, and I was just shocked that we never had a contract with our city attorneys in the past, and it just doesn't make any sense to me that that hadn't happened. So I appreciated them doing that. If I can have our acting chief touch on how your working relationship has been with the attorney firm.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. Our relationship with Gianmarco Mullins and Horton has been very positive. My main contact is with Mr. Bosnick. I've always found him to be professional and knowledgeable. I talked to our two shift lieutenants. They've said they've gotten warrant requests back quickly. Just when they need to run things past them, the response has always been positive. So no problems with them.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
Mayor Racy, I must ask this question, and this is really directly to you, because I recall in a meeting of last year that when we did approve this attorney firm, that you said we must go through a RFP. Why have we changed that course of decision today?
Because we have already gone through the process, and we had to.
We have not gone through a RFP for the replacement of our attorney services.
Well, we just recently had done that, and felt that it was, we had already kind of already seen that. We've got them already working for us, and it just made a lot of sense to continue that without having more costs to the city. They're doing a great job. I think that we're going to actually be saving money in the long term on it. We're being very close to where we were. Everybody I've talked to has been very happy with their service. I've been extremely happy. I feel like they've been doing a great job for us, and it just makes sense to me that it should be on here and let the council decide if that's what they want to do.
Mayor Racy, with all due respect, as I recall in that meeting, that this attorney fee, their attorney services were at a higher rate than what we previously had.
Yeah, it was $5.
Okay. At any rate, the point being made is that we're not looking at all our options when we have this opportunity in doing so.
Sure.
So the RFP process was, I think it's September of 17. We actually were part of that process. And
yes,
we came in second place. So I've had contracts with communities for 20 years. I was bid out, and they've been happy with the service. So the council did, at that point, did the right thing. We did participate in that, and we were one of the final two finalists. So it's not like it hasn't happened. It did happen in, like I said, the last 15 or 16 months. It occurred. So I just want to make sure that the council, the new council members and the public is aware that we did participate and were one of the finalists. In fact, came here and made a pitch, and the other firm was chosen, but ultimately we were part of that process.
I have a question for you, John, before you. It is my understanding that you've also reduced your rate, I think, was it for something with the court?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Number one, we kept the same rate that we had back when we bid on this in 17. Number two, we don't charge for mileage.
Okay.
Which is the only community I have that I don't charge mileage. Number three, we really try to be cognizant of travel time. We want to make sure that we try to group meetings together so that we're not back and forth. I'm not charging tonight. I came down because I was very humbled by the fact that you want to consider our firm, and also did want to have three of us billing tonight with Steve and Mike and myself. And yes, in terms of the court process, we are only billing $80 an hour to prepare warrants. Your prior firm was billing their full hourly rate of $120. So if you look at the invoices, there is a reduced hourly rate of $80, even though Mr. Bosnick, a 25-year lawyer, is doing this on his own. We're not having someone else do it. Mr. Bosnick is actually performing those services. And that reduced hourly rate is actually noted in the retainer agreement that you're going to consider this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 8D, approve a proposal from IMCO Incorporated to perform a chief of police assessment and evaluation for the Wayne Police Chief candidates to be taken from personnel contracted services.
Wish of council.
Move to approve.
Support.
There's Councilman Miller.
Thank you.
You know this side of the room, I guess. Okay, do we have discussion on council?
Are we still on D?
On D.
Okay.
Yes.
Is it possible for the police chief to kind of give a little bit of a summary in regards to this? Or the city manager possibly?
It would be the city manager that
okay,
would give
I'm
us a
sorry.
summary.
Thank you.
Yep. Go ahead.
Through the chair. Thank you. So EMCO is a organization that does, it's a chief of police assessment center. Our former chief of police, Al Masiag, went through EMCO for the testing, and he found it to be a very valuable experience. They do a number of oral exams. They do verbal exams, oral exams. They do written exams, and they basically test the limits of the chief in this kind of world now that we're living in, because it's very different. They have a lot of challenges. And so we have some very, very good candidates internally right now that have applied for this position. And the reason that I'm going to be very forthright and honest, the reason that I wanted to push this internally is because I was approached by the police department. We were going to post this externally and internally, but I was approached by the command officers who respectfully asked me to, and the mayor, if I may, sure. and our personnel director, if we would consider allowing the police department to post first from the internal respect. And, you know, I thought it was very, we had a very good meeting. They made a lot of good points with regards to their strengths, their leadership in the department, knowing their department. They made a good case, in my opinion. And so what I told them is that, you know, what I would probably end up doing, we thought we would end up with 3 or 4 candidates, probably more. We ended up with 2, which is great. It's fine. And but the EMCO proposal in front of you, the reason I'm doing that is because I think it would really give us an opportunity to see the strengths and weaknesses of, I would say, even more important than my position, the most important position in the city of Wayne. Being a police chief in this day and time, certainly I can't speak for the experience, but understanding the conversations that former Chief Masiag and I had, it's a very stressful job. You're dealing with you know, lack of staffing. You're dealing with less budgets. You're dealing with so many different kind of crimes. You're dealing with so many, you know, we've had issues with you know, 2 on the road at night. I mean, that's devastating. That's scary to me, and it's scary not only for the residents but for our officers. And so I just think that my opinion would just be that, you know, the reason that EMCO is here is because it will certainly help us to give us an extra step in our interview process with regards to who can really accept the challenges. So, and I have just complete faith. So, so just really quick, just EMCO, I'm just going to read this very quickly. EMCO is located in Troy. It conducts promotional testing for municipalities across the state of Michigan. And I talked about our prior police chief going through EMCO for his new position. And after speaking with EMCO and learning more about their promotional testing evaluation process, I felt confident they could provide invaluable information to us as we work through the hiring process. The cost to do this with no matter, you know, how many candidates you have, let me just point that out. I apologize. I should have had this in front of me. Is development fee is $4,800. The administration fee per day up to 5 candidates is $2,000, and then per candidate fee is $300. And so, you know, right now we would be spending about $7,400 to do this this testing. They have told me that they would be thrilled, happy, because they know we need to move quickly, that they would move us ahead of other groups and put us in at the end of the month if need be, so that we can get on track. But this is just a suggestion. It's always just a recommendation. And certainly I will accept whatever direction council provides to me.
Thank you. Do you have any more questions with that, or no? We're good? Okay. Any other council members have questions? I would echo the city manager with talking to the police. It was the command officers. It was back and forth and trying to figure out what was the best thing. I do think by adding like this piece into it, we're not that we haven't had good chiefs in the past, but we're raising the standard a little bit. We're going to have a better idea what we're doing. I know with my discussions with the city manager, she's never had experience in hiring a police chief. We want to make sure we have the right person in place in the community, and find out what the strengths and weaknesses are, so that those can be built upon and make them a better person. I think that that's one of the things that I've found throughout all of our departments is that we need to start reinvesting in our employees and finding ways that we can help and make them stronger. We're only going to be as good as our weakest link, and I do think that this is a good idea to go ahead and look at this. I understand the expense, but I think there's a greater expense in not knowing, and I think it really would be beneficial in the long run. So any other members of council? Mr. Amos.
Mayor, City Council, my name is Vern Amos and I live on Stellwagen here in Wayne. Let me put it up front first and foremost, I have nothing against the officers that have applied. Nothing at all. I wish there would have been more from within. I can only hope and pray that this council looks at hiring or looking at other subjects outside of our own department for that opportunity that you mentioned. Nothing but the best. We want, as citizens, nothing but the best, whether it costs $7,400 or whether it costs 10 grand. That 10 grand to me would be well spent, like the city manager said, the most important job in this city at this time and place. So I beg you, please employ that this test be delayed until we have the opportunity to request applications throughout the state of Michigan or even across the country, if so be it, and get a minimum of at least 5 applicants to send for this testing. There's no rush. There's nothing in the charter that says we have to do a police chief tomorrow. There's nothing that says we have to do it next month. So I beg you, please take a look at outside the box. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. 1 no. Motion carries.
Would you like me to do a roll call on that so I can get the nay?
Okay, sure.
Mayor Pro Tem Porter?
No.
Councilman Miller?
Yes.
Councilman Webster?
Yes.
Councilwoman Skiff?
I didn't actually say anything. Can I place my vote now? Sorry.
That's why we do a roll call.
Okay, thank you. No.
Councilman Wagner?
Yes.
Councilman Dowd?
Yes.
Mayor Racy?
Yes.
The motion prevails. Item 8E, approve a resolution for the City of Wayne poverty exemption for 2019.
Motion to approve.
Support.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem, and then Councilman Webster. Any discussion? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The addendum, item F, discussion on changing the policies and procedures of the Wayne City Council, an example, citizens' comments and input on items on the agenda, and removal of items for next agenda. And there could be others. These are just the 2 examples that are put out.
Move to approve.
Support.
Okay, discussion?
Actually, this is a discussion, so at this point a motion isn't done.
You don't need to have it, okay.
No, probably a subcommittee needs to be formed to look at those policies and procedures.
Okay.
And as mayor, then you would appoint that subcommittee.
Yeah, but do I have to, if we have a committee, do I have to dissolve a committee then to?
Okay, if there are already 2 members, no, you do not have to absolve a committee if there's already a standing committee.
But we're not supposed to have standing committees, that's why I'm.
Well, if there are,
that's why
actually, the policy and procedures talks about committees, not, you're right, no standing committees, but you can form a committee. So if there's already a committee formed, then that will suffice. I'd recommend having 3 people on that committee. As mayor, you normally sit on all committees.
Okay.
So if I could have the committee names, perhaps a motion would be in order to set the committee with names.
Okay, I was thinking something different, and I wasn't sure that I had to do what we had. So,
Mayor Racy, if you recall, in the last committee that we participated in, former Mayor Rowe sent out an email asking any volunteers that would like to apply, and she had tried to establish various groups of committees on some issues that we were faced with at the time. If in past practice you want to continue in applying those same mechanisms in order to review, once again, the rules and procedures and ethic policy, as we had been involved in the past, we can do so. Where will the determination specifically only be just to rearrange those 2 items in our rules and procedures, or to remove them? Or are we looking at something deeper there?
Well,
for this committee.
Yeah, I think
what is the goal at this point of, we need to kind of define what our goal is in bringing this matter to council.
Originally, it was just to take a couple items and look at them, but this council has the ability to set their own policies and procedures, so it was recommended that we go ahead and meet like that and have them meet and kind of look at these and some other things, and if there's other issues that they'd like to address. I wasn't thinking that the same committee would do it again. I was thinking of both of us not being on it.
I'm just using an example.
Yeah, but I'm just saying for this committee, I was thinking both of us wouldn't be on it and try to have 3 new council members on it instead of us, since we've done it, in the past, and get a different perspective on it and see what they had to say. Are you opposed to that?
Well, quite frankly, I'm opposed to us changing anything at all at this point. If it's to remove the opportunity for a council member to be able to put something on the agenda at a council meeting, I'm very objective to that. I'm not sure what you can do. It is within the charter that we give time for the residents to be able to come to the podium and express some concerns or questions. So it kind of narrows it down to really, we're looking at removing the ability for a council member that represents the constituents in this community to be able to put something on the agenda of all free will.
I mean, a council person can put it on the agenda throughout the week. I mean, it's not.
It would require.
I mean, it's just a matter of there's ability to be able to talk and see if that's really something we should be addressing or not. Just kind of, it feels like we just throw these out here, and sometimes they're not items that maybe we should have an agenda. Maybe that should be a study session or something else, and the administration's not be able to give us any recommendations in looking at it. It just seems like it would be more. It would be better for all of us to be not like, it feels like we're blindsided on things sometimes, and it's not anybody. I'm just saying, anybody throwing things out instead of us talking to the administration and talking with other council members. I want the council to talk to each other. This shouldn't be surprised when we come to a council meeting and say we want to throw something on the agenda. I feel like we should have some discussion between us without making decision. We are able to have some dialogue, and I want this council to have that. It shouldn't. That's just the way I'd like to operate it. I don't like the surprise factor. That's just my personal opinion.
Mayor Rowe, it should never be a surprise factor at all.
I'm not Mayor Rowe.
I think it's very relevant.
I'm sorry, you call me Mayor Rowe.
Well, you did say surprise factor, okay, and it should never be a surprise factor for a council member that would like to put something on the agenda at a meeting. My concern is that the ability at a meeting is I'm not restricted because of the consensus of the other fellow council members that would reject that suggestion. Okay, I think that there should be an expression of free will on this council individually of each member.
Pro Tem.
Councilman Miller, you have the right to put items on the agenda during the week. It does not take a second person to put them on anywhere. That is a misconception by prior mayors and prior council. It does not take a second. It takes you to say, I want this on the agenda, and direct the message, the email or whatever, to the city clerk and to the city manager, and it will be taken care of. It will be put on. That's your right as a council person.
I sincerely appreciate, because that's the perception that I was led to understand.
And that's
okay?
and that
is the reason why I am voicing my opinion regarding that matter. So with all due respect, if that's the case, I'm good with it. Okay? I just feel I don't want to, and it can be in many multiple circumstances, that the inability of any council member, regardless if it's through the email system or on the or at a meeting, to be able to put or request something to be put on the agenda, period. And where I understood was that for me to put something on the agenda, or any member, I would require someone to second it in the email system.
That is
and that has been past practice, and that I've been on council for 4 years, and that's the way it has been going on. So I apologize for my misunderstanding of that. I appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
So just to clarify, I did go through the charter quite a bit. Agenda is not mentioned very often, only 2 times in the charter. In neither case does it say it takes 2 people or a second on the, so as I said, it was a misconception. I think they went by the rule of a special meeting. A special meeting, the mayor can call a special meeting, or 2 council people. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where they got the idea that it takes 2 people to put it on, put something on the agenda, and that is false, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's what we were led to believe.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Mayor Racy, if I may, now that you've had discussion and if everyone's done, if it's the will of the council, the motion could be to direct the mayor to form a committee to look at the policies and procedures and make changes if necessary.
So I can put whoever I want on and then bring that back at the next council meeting.
So that would be an appropriate motion for the...
No, that'd be great. That's what I would prefer.
So moved.
So do we need somebody to amend their motion then?
I'll word the motion.
But I mean, we got to just get...
Right now we have a motion to that effect. We do need support for that.
Okay.
Actually, the motion's got to be made before you can question it.
So
after the motion's made, the mayor can recognize you, and then you can ask questions on it.
Okay. So
the mayor can recognize you, though.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
So that was Councilman Wagner and Porter?
Porter. Mayor Pro Tem Porter. Yeah.
Councilman's good.
And then the motion should also state, if I may, that the mayor will relay those names to the city clerk.
Yes. Yep, I'll give you those names. And then that would be on the next agenda. We'd approve that at the next agenda.
And now before the vote, you can recognize someone from the audience.
Okay. Did we have any questions still? Mr. Osborne?
Mr. Mayor and the council, at the present time, 2019, do we have a copy of rules and procedures or policies and procedures for our council?
There's a current copy.
If I may, that can be FOIA'd.
Okay.
And
ma'am?
It can be FOIA'd, and we do have them in the clerk's office.
I didn't hear you.
You can FOIA that information.
I'm not FOIAing that. I just asked a yes or no question. Do we have?
The answer is yes.
Do we have a set of the policies and procedures?
Absolutely.
I think Mr. Porter, Councilman Porter, worked on that some years ago. That's what was missing here. that we didn't have any direction. So the thing is, if we have some policies and procedures, then it's no problem just bringing the couple of 2 or 3 pages here with them all printed, and we can see what you're going to review and dialect over. Because I think it's a real tricky thing that you added on here. This agenda, the word agenda, it may be on, Mr. Porter, may be only mentioned twice, but constitutional rights may be only mentioned once, but you still have them. And it's a precarious opportunity here to knock out people who are citizens, taxpayers, and our representatives up there, that we asked you to ask a question. If you remember, the last lawyer that was here, Rita O'Leary Bradshaw, was asked the same direct question, and she gave a lawyer's answer to it. Who was allowed to place things on the agenda, when and how? Because they were confused up here, Madam Clerk. They were confused. So she read it through the mayor. She said, okay, and you all listened to it, and you all approved it. And you said, yes, I'm fine with that, I understand it. I ask you today, where are those policies and procedures today? It's just plain common sense. And when you start to redact, as you have done, I have noticed Councilman Miller has tried to put something on the agenda 3 times. But you have, through some mechanism, been able to knock it off. Now we're getting into, oh, we're going to have a little small committee to knock off what the people want to say. So I would hope you say, whether you find it in the agenda, Mr. Porter, find it in there again, because I think it's very valuable to the citizens. We're trying to voice our opinion because we haven't got any satisfaction. That's what it says. And I appreciate your very posh and professionalism in carrying out this meeting under certain points of Robert Rules of Order. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And if I may, Mayor Racy may answer that. If you'd like to hang on until after the meeting, I'd be happy to print off a copy of those policies and procedures for you. They are public documents. They were approved by the City Council. So just knock on the cage at the office, and I'd be happy to print those out for you this evening.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mayor Racy, may I ask a question?
Sure.
For the discussion in here about changing the citizen comments, that was never like touched on. Are we?
Well, I think we'll have the committee kind of form that, and they're going to come back with recommendations and all this stuff instead of us piecing it all at the table.
Okay.
We're going to let them come up
I think that Mr. Osborne may believe that we're trying to cut out citizen comments, and I didn't think that was what we're trying to do at all.
You're correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and I also want to mention that, you know, that the residents are welcome to talk to any one of their council members or myself and talk to us about ideas that they'd like to see us do. And I see those things happening. We're going to shortly have something with the Mayor Pro Tem with the vacant property ordinance that we've been working on for, I think he said 5 years, but it will happen at some point. And it's sometimes stuff in government works slow, but we are listening, and people do have a voice. That's why you elected us to be up here. So with that, do we need to do anything to close the discussion, or does anybody else have any questions or want to say anything else? Okay, I guess just move the agenda then.
You need to follow through with the motion.
Okay.
On the motion was made by Councilman Wagner and supported by Councilman Porter.
Okay.
To form the committee, so we need a vote on that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 8G, discussion regarding the Wayne City Council's 2019 vision and goals.
Wish of council? Or do we don't have to have nothing on this, you said? Just
discussion.
Okay. So just open that up. Does anybody have anything they want to say?
Mayor Racy, through the chair, I just want to, I went and looked at in past council sessions that we've had when I was on, and we've talked about a list of goals, and quite frankly, I find that some of those goals that we had discussed in previous councils, we've made some movement in. We've gone in the right direction with some of those suggestions, ideas. For example, the park system, okay, or in regards to our downtown area. I also found that Ms. Norsini has provided periodically over the years kind of like a dashboard of priorities that and this is what they look like. Okay, periodically, kind of set some priorities, some goals for the community, and you know, we're knocking them off. You know, we did the we got a real estate agent to start representing for our properties, city properties. We made some movement. We've made some progress in those areas, as well as other areas. I'm going to just kind of read off just some previous priorities, and I want to take up the time of the other council members, because I know you, when you got elected, you were elected, you ran because you have a vision for this community, okay? And I think it's so important for us to have a vision in this community, okay? And to be able to develop policy and priorities, so that, you know, goals. That's what we're up here for, is to be able to achieve some goals on behalf of the entire community. So, and I'm just going to call off some of the things that were on here that we had discussed. Is, of course, was the budget, okay? And I know Councilman Racy, or Mayor Racy, you know, 4 years ago, we were at that breaking point with the Hype Center. Okay, we had to make some tough decisions there, and we were right there. Okay, we had to turn the boat around, and we've made much progress, as indicated earlier tonight's presentation. Outdated ordinances we spoke about. We spoke about discord on the council. We talked about lack of police, too much city-owned property, too many tax-free properties, not enough working together in city groups, lack of community activities, retirements, pensions, energy, paying fees, dog and cat license, just to name a few. So some of the things that kind of, in my mind, you know, and these are still all relevant in some way, shape, or form for all of us, okay? And I think us as a group, I would just like for us to see us come together, put our heads together, and just let's not make it too complicated. Let's have like 3 priorities or 5 priorities tops, and really put our energy towards it and making some success out of it. For me, the things that I'm thinking about is a safety authority. Okay, I think we've talked about this before. I think I want to review that and look at it some more down the road. I've seen some other communities that have had that struggle and discussion, and have made those kinds of changes in their community. It may be beneficial and necessary for us to look at that to remain sustainable. Okay, as the report, as he had indicated, we're good right now, but we're not completely safe. So we have to start continuing to look at some other ways of being more financially efficient. And I'm just looking at that as a suggestion. I think that another thing that I would like to suggest is that we look at how, let's look at a different way in how we can recruit small businesses in our downtown. If there's some special consultant agency that can help steer and recruit small businesses in our downtown, is there something there that we can look at? I've spoken with some DDA members recently, and they really have some really good ideas that I have not heard before, and I think it'd be worth having that kind of dialogue in relationship, because we need to continue to, the bottom line is we need to continue to rebuild our tax base. In these last 2 years, we have increased our tax base by $1.5 million. And that's good news. And we need to continue that because we are landlocked, and we need to be able to maximize our boundaries with the most essential potential of tax base, because bottom line is that's what pays our basic services, you know. And thirdly, I find it very important is we need to work on improving our accountability and transparency and our culture within our municipality. I think that if we don't have those, don't have that, nothing else is going to fall into place and look and move forward with. What I'm looking at suggesting is that we need some sort of checks and balances built into our system that we can help to start restoring trust with our residents, within ourselves as a council and our administration. If we can't do that with ourselves, how can we expect new businesses or new residences to take that same footing within this community? So those are just some of the suggestions, ideas that I'm bringing out. I most certainly welcome to hear from the others. I quite frankly have not heard anything thus far. You know, if it regardless through the email system or outside of the council chambers, and we need to lower those walls, quite frankly, if we are to be able to achieve anything together.
I agree. I mean, and I'm not trying to start a fight, but when myself or Mayor Pro Tem Porter reach out to you, you need to, you know, respond back to us. I called you, you never responded between these last meetings, and I know Mayor Pro Tem also reached out to you on another issue and you didn't respond. And every other council member has responded to us, you know, when we reach out to them. So it goes both ways. I mean, for everybody, but I mean, when we reach out to you, we expect a call back in order for us to be able to keep and move the city stuff forward. So I appreciate that. I do think that we need to break down those walls. Any other council members have any comments?
I have, Mayor.
Yep.
Something I feel is a necessity, and the mayor and I have talked, and city manager and I have talked. I think we need to somehow search out the money and the will and get a complete charter review started immediately. You know, start talking and find out what we can do to get a charter review done. It's way past time. I know the city manager mentioned to me something that the labor attorney talked about, and also our attorney, city attorney. There's so many things in the charter that are outdated and are actually illegal. We can't do them. So that is one thing, and I want to continue to update the ordinances. Mike Biden's been really helpful in the vacant properties ordinance, and I want to keep looking at the ordinances and see if we can update them and concentrate on particularly, I know there's the rental is a big deal. I know that he's already been working on that, but I'd like to have the council understand where we stand on it and what we need to do and how we need to improve that. I don't know if anybody knows where we really are. We have so many rentals that are not even registered rentals in the city. We need to stop that and get them registered and get them inspected properly. That's two of the major things that I would like to see right now.
And I don't expect everybody, if you don't have something today, you know, that's fine. I mean, one of my goals was to have the council go to training just to find out more about being a council member. And who's out of the council, who's currently registered to go? You're going tomorrow?
I'm going next week.
And Kevin's going. So, I mean, for me, I want them to have a basis, you know, a little bit of what it is as a council member to be able to figure some of that stuff out. I think that's great, and it's a start. I mean, but I agree. One of the things I think that if you want to send ideas back and forth, that's fine, but we can't make decisions on things. But at the same time, I think some of this stuff might be a study session instead of an open discussion at a council meeting. I don't think this is a business meeting, and we should have a separate meeting for those types of things, and I have no problem with that. but I think we should look at all those things. I know that I agree with the Mayor Pro Tem on the charter review. I had asked the city manager to give us an outline of what that takes, because I wanted to have a kind of a scope before, you know, making a recommendation of what the costs are. You got to know what you're getting into before you dive into something. So I had already talked to her about that, and we're trying to figure those things out. That's a huge undertaking if that's what we choose to take, and that's something that hasn't been done in almost 60 years. So for this council to tackle that, just that one thing alone is huge. But I think we can do other things too. I think we're still doing things. I think we are, you know, doing some things in our parks right now with getting a donation from Beaumont Hospital, and they're going to put in a new play structure in Rotary Park 2. We had the foundation that disbanded, but we have $14,000 towards softball. I mean, those are some goals I think we've been talking about, and we're going to see some of those things. But I have no problem us, you know, identifying some of that stuff. Even the list, Councilman Miller, that you talked about, I resonated that most of that stuff that we've been talking about and doing that was on that list that you shared tonight. I think that we are doing a lot of stuff, but I have no problem with creating some more, another goal thing. But I'd like to get everybody through classes and just try to get everybody on an even playing field with some stuff, and letting them, you know, they've been reading all the reading material that they've been given to just digest is a lot. And for us that have been up here, you know, we already kind of understand some of that stuff, but it's pretty overwhelming. And, you know, so but I have no problem in the future of us having some study sessions and discussing that. So does anybody else have any more?
Mary C.
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to point out, and I apologize if either of you, if I had missed the call, okay? But I would encourage that the entire council uses the email system in communicating so that we can all be on the same page of understanding of, you know, our concerns or information or ideas together, okay, instead of individually. I would prefer, you know, and I think it just be a good communication skill for all of us.
But I understand what you're saying, but we have to be very careful with that, because we can't come to conclusions with things like that. And
we just use those guidelines.
Yeah, I'm just saying, sometimes you need to make a phone call. Sometimes I want to be able to talk to somebody, because I want to make sure that you understand what I'm talking about and just not interpreting something totally different. You know, I think we use all means necessary to be able to talk to each other. That's within the law. You know, I think that all this stuff is, you know, proper. You know, having the ability for, you know, couple council members going out after meeting and talking, you know, as long as they're doing it within the parameters of what the Open Meetings Act is. I want our council to have dialogue with each other, because the better they know where each other's coming from, the easier it's going to be for us to be able to move the city forward. I think at the end of the day, I don't think anybody's up here because they don't like or want to see the city succeed. I mean, I think we all care about this community and are trying to make and do the best that we can. And everybody has different skill sets and finding different things where they're good at, and we're still kind of learning that. I mean, it's still really early. I mean, what is this, the
third meeting,
fifth meeting? Huh? So, no, I understand, Councilman or Councilwoman.
Thank you. I just wanted to echo what Mayor Pro Tem Porter said. I don't really think that we can kick the charter down the road any further, and we really do need to come up with a way to find the funds to do it, because I think it's an urgent thing. And so I just am supportive of that. And one of the other things that I know that is talked about throughout the community that people are really frustrated about is the ward system. So maybe that could be something. I know it's going to be another big project, but something also for consideration.
And I think that the ward system will also get talking to some individuals that will actually be dealt with when we do the charter review, because all those different pieces, there's a lot of different pieces that need to come together and figure out how the process works, because we've not done it, and we're all going to be in a learning curve with that. So that's great. Anyone else have any comments?
Yeah, just one quick thing. I just wanted to add to what Mayor Pro Tem Porter said about the vacant properties ordinance. It's one thing to have ordinances, it's another thing to be able to enforce them. And one thing I would like to see is a position created in the building department for somebody who the majority of their time is going to be for writing tickets and for inspecting rental properties and looking at the vacant properties and looking at blight. I think that's a position that if we create it, it's going to pay for itself in the number of fines they're going to be able to put out. Also, by attacking the blight in the city, we're going a long way to, how can I put this, to setting a good foundation for raising our tax base so that we can afford more police and more fire for the long term. So that's what I'd like to see, is that one position created this year in the building department.
Anybody else? I just want to make one more comment. The city manager and I had lunch with the superintendent of schools this week. I found out when I became mayor that was a common practice that Mayor Rowe did with her, and she asked me to continue that. So we had lunch, and I invited the city manager to come along with me. And one of the things we're going to talk about too is I think with development, and there's some property that the schools own. We own property, and we need to look at development for some of that stuff, and they're willing to talk to us. I mean, they haven't said anything one way or the other, but they're open to having those conversations. And I mean, I think we look at those types of things where we have mutual interest, and also looking at what's going on with the schools. And I'll have the city manager send some stuff out to you. I wasn't aware that the superintendent was providing the council some things that were going on in the schools with statistics and things, and she gave some of that to us. And I think that some of that would be useful as we're looking at making decisions, especially as they're looking at trying to figure out how they're going to rearrange their schools. And maybe our development should, if we're developing over here, I mean, all these things play together if we're all talking and keeping communication between the two. So there's a lot of different moving pieces, but I think that that's a start too, that we open our relationships, try to have even better relationship with the schools in the future, and continue to find ways to make things better. So,
Mayor Racy, one other thing you remind me of something here is about court consolidation. I know the judge spoke about that some months ago, and I remember there was an expiration about the beginning of the year here regarding that matter. We had some discussions with Westland, and they weren't very fruitful. I'm just wondering, is there any other communities that border us that we could have that discussion with? I mean, I could see this potentially being a cost savings for us, and this is something additionally that we need to, like I spoke earlier about a safety authority, some of those ideas to look down the road of how to keep us sustainable, So it may be possible if we get some information on an update on, where we're at with Westland, and that consolidation.
I think I can update that. We're nowhere,
Yeah. Okay. And so then,
I mean, it's not going anywhere right now. So
is there any Plan Bs that we could look at?
I mean, they're talking to the state, trying to figure out, issues. But I mean, there's a lot of moving factors in that too, trying to figure out what to do. So, but those are things we can discuss in the future too. Anybody else? Okay, we're good. Just go ahead and move the agenda.
Item 8H, addendum, excuse me, discussion regarding the workplace assessment report.
Mayor Racy.
Yes.
I would request that we go ahead and table this for the time being. This just seems to be trying to use as a weapon against people up here, and I find it to be absolutely ridiculous. I think we need to we've addressed various points of it, but we talked about moving forward. We need to move forward. We need to focus on all these things we just talked about.
If I may, Mayor Racy, when a motion is made to table, there's no discussion on it.
Okay. So I need a second for his motion.
I'll second that.
Okay. Should we do a roll call vote or a A regular vote? How do you want to do that?
Depends on if there's dissent or not.
I would ask for a roll call vote on that, please.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Porter,
Yes.
Councilman Miller,
No.
Councilman Webster,
Yes.
Councilwoman Skiff,
Yes.
Councilman Wagner,
Yes.
Councilman Dowd,
Yes.
Mayor Racy.
Yes.
The motion prevails. It is tabled and cannot be discussed until it's removed from the table.
Okay, thank you. We're past that. Administrative reports.
Through the chair. I've got a kind of a lengthy report. I'm sorry, I'm kind of going along with everybody else tonight. First, I just want to say I was able to join the Parks and Trails Committee with the council liaison, Councilman Webster, and with Ed Queen and the group. And I just want to say that we had a fantastic couple of meetings. And this is a really great group who's motivated. We've got on track. We've got some projects we're working on. I thought the meeting was excellent. I'm looking forward to the one next month. And I just wanted to say to the entire group, including Councilman Webster and Ed, great job so far. I mean, I think that there's a lot of progress, you know, moving forward. But the group was really excited to get things moving along. Mrs. Rockwell, you had a few questions, so if I miss anything, we'll definitely try to follow up. So I tried to catch them all. So one of your questions, what's going on with the tattoo shop? So I'm assuming you're talking about the demolition property, through the chair?
Yes.
The demolition property, just for clarification. Yep. We are still in pending litigation with one of the adjacent property owners. We're trying to move along as quickly as we can, but unfortunately we can't control the courts and we can't control any of that. But I think hopefully we'll have some resolve within the upcoming months here.
John Stivkovich, or how we say his name, was the one that asked me to ask the two questions.
Okay.
And I did talk to Mike tonight, and Mr. Quinn.
Yeah. You want to take the podium?
And Mr. Quinn tonight about what went on, and that's what John's concern was, that the fence between the two buildings, since I come here, has blown down, and the barricades are blown on the sidewalk, and he was concerned about somebody getting hurt.
Yeah,
and they
I think that was addressed.
They would look into it, and yeah, Mr.
Queen
Biden said that the signs that were laying in the medium, that he would check that out tomorrow. Perfect. So thank you for checking into it also. I know it's in litigation. You can't do a whole lot, but I appreciate you checking into it.
Certainly. Certainly. And the removal of obsolete road construction signs. Mike Biden did go through all the state roads and county roads. He did not find any, but if you could follow up after the meeting with him on any of those items, that would be great. Any additional? Okay, so there's no more additional. Okay, thank you. The removal of the leaves on the sidewalk by the library, that was completed last week by the DPW. Thank you. The sale of the parks update. We have a developer reaching out to the homeowners in those areas to invite them to a meeting to discuss potential housing. They're going to try to get some feedback. So that'll be in the upcoming months. Yes, ma'am. The removal of the for sale sign at the old B&E building. The reason we haven't removed it is because we have not completely closed on that property. So we don't want to jinx ourselves, so to speak. So as soon as that property, the sale is closed, we will remove that sign. Okay, you're welcome. Mr. Amos, there you are. You had a question about the lighting assessment and any savings from the LED changeover and if there would be any rebate checks. And show me the money, huh? This year, and if you have any follow-up questions, please talk to Mike Biden, and he can talk to you about this. But this year, our street lighting cost was reduced by 7.5%. And this decrease was passed on to the property owners and reflects the full reduction in costs related to the new lights. But we will need to renew the street lighting assessment this year. So, hope that answers your question. Unfortunately, costs don't go down for us either. So, Mr. Brock, I just wanted to say, I know Mrs. Brock is here. Mr. Brock had to leave, but thank you for recognizing the hard work and sacrifice of the employees. We exchanged an email with regards to his comments at the last meeting. I just wanted to make sure that I was answering correctly on the stability of the city's finances, and he just wanted to commend everybody for all of their hard work and sacrifice. So please tell him thank you. We do appreciate those kind of comments. I see that the Historical Society is here. We're going to, do you have anything to report this evening? Okay, we're going to do these under administration reports instead of citizen comments from here on out. So if you want to get up real quick and give us your update. Thank you, sir.
John Mills, Chestnut Street, Ward 3.
As stated last week in the first sesquicentennial minute, George M. Johnson, seeking a more prosperous location, sold his Chicago Road Tavern and moved north to the Ann Arbor Trail to seek greater fortune. Johnson's Tavern was sold in late 1825 to Stephen G. Simmons, who brought his wife and children to what would become Wayne. Mr. Simmons did not experience overwhelming growth in the business, and over time began to drink in even greater amounts. In late 1829, when his wife reportedly declined his invitation, some might say demand, that she drink with him, he became excessively drunk and abusive, and in the end, he beat her to death. Now, the marshals arrested him the next morning. He was transported to the county jail in Detroit. He was tried for murder. He was convicted and sentenced to death. Now, a gallows was constructed in Campus Martius. Many citizens came to view the hanging. The crowd was boisterous and exuberant over his hanging, the spectacle of which was so repulsive to the writers of what would become the first Constitution for the state of Michigan, that the authors of that Constitution wrote in it a ban on capital punishment. Thus, when the Constitution was adopted, Michigan became the first state in the Union to prohibit the death penalty. This prohibition continues to this day. I want to thank you for your time, and we'll have another historical fact about Wayne at the next council meeting.
Through the chair, I'd like to invite Acting Chief Ryan Strong up. He wanted to provide some updates regarding some positive news at the Wayne Police Department.
Thank you. I'd just like to give members of council and the public an update on a few of the great things going on at the police department. We recently put 2 recruits through the police academy. Officers Marcian and Williams graduated in November. They have approximately 2 months left in their field training program before they begin solo patrol. 2 additional recruits started the police academy last week. They're scheduled to graduate in May. In short, we will soon have 4 new officers at the Wayne Police Department. That is significant and exciting news. Although we're still severely understaffed, this is an enormous step in the right direction. I mean, talk about moving forward. Great example. Second, as many of you know, the police department recently received an $81,000 grant to purchase new in-car cameras and body cameras. This is also extremely exciting news. Our current in-car camera system is at the end of its life, and we have no body cameras. Having properly functioning in-car cameras and body cameras will be beneficial to the police department on many levels. Training, reduction in liability, transparency with the public, and the prosecution of dangerous criminals. City Manager Nasserini was instrumental in obtaining this grant. Due to the city's financial situation, I'm frankly unsure of how we would have obtained this equipment otherwise. So I'd like to personally and professionally thank City Manager Nasserini and members of the council for their support in both of these matters. Law enforcement can be a difficult job. Receiving support like this definitely makes our jobs easier. So thank you.
That'll conclude my report unless the city attorney has any.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure.
I've put a copy of the vacant property ordinance. We're pretty close to the final version, so feel free to comment, shoot me an email, give me a call, what have you. But after taking in all the comments, we should be pretty close to the first reading on this, perhaps at the next meeting. We've had a lot of meetings with Mr. Byton and Mr. Porter and the mayor, and a lot of people have had a lot of input. Even the prior city attorney had quite a bit of input on this document. So it's been a long road, and it's a result of hard work from a lot of people. So feel free to give me your input on those. And we've already started on the sidewalk ordinance, so that should be following pretty closely in the next month or 2. So keep an eye out for that. And I do appreciate the faith you have in my firm. So I appreciate the opportunity to serve the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry. Citizens' comments or requests on items not on the agenda. Citizens are limited their comments or requests to 3 minutes. The City Council asks that if you do have a question or concern, to bring it to the attention of the appropriate departments whenever possible. If you feel a matter has not been resolved satisfactorily, you are encouraged to bring it to the attention of the city manager, and if still not resolved satisfactorily, to the mayor and the City Council. The mayor and city council and the department heads may not respond to the questions at the meeting, but will respond by the next city council meeting or as soon as possible, once they have looked into the matter. If I may, Mr. Mayor, if I could ask the citizens that come up, and I apologize, I'm not familiar with all the faces and names. If you could state your full name and your city of residence, it would be helpful to me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Blackwell.
Well, Mrs. DeHart, you've known me since about 1984 when I was in high school. So, pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, pass. Mr. Mayor, this is your publication. I'm sorry. This is your publication advocating love in this community. This, or I should say these, are the hostile work environment reports that you have participated and condoned. Who is the real John Rasa in this community? The residents have a right to know, and they're asking themselves today, they made the right decision at the ballot box. And this is the first time for me for being just a couple minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And I just want to say the report said that there was no hostile work environment, and I just want to keep saying that because that report said there was no hostile work environment, and we move forward on that. So, next question. Mr. Osborne.
Not a question, it's the comment section, sir. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Osborne's a name. Spell it with an E and you're lucky. Now that you are mayor, are you going to continue receiving no-bid contracts with the city of Wayne through either the Wayne Dispatch, Jonah Graphics, or other business interests that you have? Are you going to lead the residents to believe that this is not a conflict of interest? End of question. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Katie.
Hello, Catherine Sample. I live in Westland, but I work here in Wayne. And with all the discussion on workplace assessment, I just wanted to share a little bit of what it's like to work here at City Hall for me. I love coming into work each day. And I know how important that is because I've worked places that I did not want to go into work each day. So I'm very thankful that I enjoy working here. I enjoy the people that I work with. I have a great team. We all have our own job duties, but when we need help, we all help each other out, no matter what it is. We have a family-first environment. If someone needs to flex their time, we help each other out. We do what we need to do. We have supportive leadership. And this afternoon, since I knew I was going to bring this up at the meeting, I went around to my team and I just randomly asked each one individually, what is something that you like about working here? And I was laughing by the last person I talked to because all of them except one said the same thing. They said the people. They really enjoy the people that they work with. They enjoy our team. And the one person that said something different, she said everything. So I just wanted to share that.
Okay. Thank you. Tyler?
Hello, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Tyler Mull. I'm the volunteer curator at the Historical Museum. So I just wanted to run some numbers by you and talk about some of the good things happening. From 2000 to 2009, the museum only had about 300 visitors per year. And that was with a paid staff member there. In 2017, once I started doing some of the stuff there, our visitor numbers more than doubled to about 770. And then last year in 2018, jumped up to 1,100 visitors. So that's a 40% increase over the year previous, and quadruple what was even 5 years ago. And that's not including a lot of the people that come to our talks and events. So it's easily could be double last year's. So we also had a nice article about the museum in Hometown Life magazine this year. We had a nice article in the Eagle, and we also had Channel 7 News come to the museum in October. The Historical Society also purchased an ad for the museum in the Wayne County Resource and Relocation Guide, and that's a free publication throughout the county. It's going to advertise the museum and tell people to come to Wayne. We also have the St. Mary's exhibit, which is up right now telling the history of the school, and that comes down in February. So if you haven't seen it yet, come on in and check it out. And in March, we're going to have the second high school art show, where high school students from Wayne and John Glenn are going to be showing their artwork in the museum. So check that out when it comes up. And also, I can't give away too much yet, but we possibly have an important historical artifact that could be coming back to Wayne for the first time in 100 years. It's something that we thought was lost forever, but an 87-year-old woman called us and might have something we need.
Awesome.
So that's exciting. We'll let you know more about that when it comes up. And yeah, just wanted to say our hours, we're there Wednesdays and Thursdays. Wednesdays from 10 until 7, and Thursdays from 10 until about 6. So yeah, council members, people in the public, come on in. It's amazing how many times people come in and say, I've lived in Wayne for 5, 10 years, all my life, and we didn't even know this museum was here. So come on out and check out. It's way different than it was even a year ago. So I encourage everyone to stop in your local museum.
Thank you. Kathy?
I'm not drunk, I just walked this way. Kathy Rockwell, Wayne. When you give the key to the Kowalski tonight, and the thing to the police officer, the little statue, you couldn't hear the presentation. And I was wondering, when we do this again, if you could turn maybe your mic or somebody's mic around. And even when Kevin got sworn in, we can't hear anything you say to the person that you're giving it to. And I was just wondering if you might be able to turn somebody's mic around or something. Okay, thank you very much.
We'll check into that, thank you. Mr. Queen?
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. My name is Ed Queen. I'm a City of Westland resident, but I'm a City of Wayne employee. Tonight I wanted to speak on behalf of the staff. It is disheartening as a staff member to come to some of these meetings only to have a handful of individuals that are not employees of the city regurgitate information that is old news, all the while trying to tell us how we feel. We see these individuals as the ones that are trying to create an environment that is hostile. Our current work environment is by no means hostile, as Katie Sample had mentioned in hers. If you were to ask the dedicated employees that work for us, what are the main factors of your unhappiness, they would say we haven't had any raises, we pay more into our health care, and we have lost other benefits that we have worked hard to achieve. None of the employees that I have talked to ever mention a hostile work environment. So for the individuals that want to say, what about those employees who left because of the environment? You mean the ones that retired or resigned? The answer is simple. The police chief, the clerk, a couple of the DPW employees that were mentioned, all found better opportunities, some with an increase in pay or better benefits. As City Manager Noserini had mentioned, she always encourages us, if for some reason there's a better opportunity out there, to go seek that opportunity. And especially if it's for an increase in pay or better benefits that maybe the City of Wayne cannot offer. This is my opinion here. For those who have resigned from positions that were related in some form or fashion to the city, those were the other individuals that were fueling a hostile environment. Whatever that report was is now in the past. For those that want to continue to drudge up the past, by all means stay in the past then. It takes a strong leader to make hard decisions to move an organization forward. City Manager Noserini is an excellent leader, and her hard, dedicated work ethic mirrors the staff that she leads. We as a staff choose to move forward with City Manager Noserini, the employees, council members, and all of the community that wish to do the same. For those who are the naysayers, either climb aboard or be left behind. Don't be the problem, be part of the solution. On a more positive note, for the DPW, we have moved forward. Coming up on the January 29th, last year we hired a new employee, and that employee will reach his 1-year anniversary here on the 29th of January. Also this month, we just filled 3 other full-time vacancies that were vacant for quite a while, trying to resolve some of these things to the hiring process and to get individuals to come into our city. So we worked diligently to change some things around the pay structure to try to lure those people in, rather than becoming a training facility for other municipalities when they leave our departments.
Ed, you're out of time.
Okay. Well, just real quick, 2 new dump trucks are on order. That's a positive, and we hope to see those sometime in the summer.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening, and have a good evening.
Any other comments? Mr. Amos?
Once again, my name is Vern Amos, and I live on Stellwagen. I'd like to say that I am a member of the Neighborhood Patrol, and I quit for some time and have rejoined the force last fall, and I patrol regularly. I'm not going to tell you what times or days, but our membership knows when I'm out there. And the police department knows most of the time that I'm out there and where I'm at. We've gotten a lot more support, I believe, from the police department through Lieutenant Strong. He's made an effort to reach out to us, to have bi-weekly meetings and point out hot spots to us to try to help visualize or listen for troubled areas, so that we can resolve some of our local problems. What I see on the street repeatedly, though, are people that are leaving their car doors unlocked, people that are leaving their garage doors open. I've even witnessed garage doors open with the lights on. Snow blowers sitting in very easy access along with mowing equipment or other power tools. This only encourages the dope addicts and the thieves that are out there trying to make a buck so they can make the next day in their cozy little drug haven. And please turn your porch lights on and help us see the problem areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
Bob Sherland, been in Wayne for 50 years. Seen him come, seen him go. Remember when Wayne was a little city? I've left the city. I've had to go to another location because of my wife. We have to live on a flat floor. We're too old. But I want to remind you, or I want to tell you, that I remember when Wayne was a nice, simple little city, and it was a destination. Now it's a pass-through. When you guys are looking at rebuilding your tax base, don't do your tax base at the cost of your city. You're going to lose the city if you do that. You might think, oh, there's $1 here or $1 there. I remember when downtown Wayne was actually a small little community before we bought a parking structure that went nowhere, before we got the fantastic restaurant that's right downtown, and no offense to anybody that happens to be a McDonald's fan, but prime property that we have given away because we needed a couple of bucks. We needed tax structure. That's prime property that you guys do not want to give up. If you give up your little city, it's already gotten pretty big, you're going to give up your future. And that's what this city needs, is a future. The city would really have done well if it would have done things better in the past. That's gone. Look to the future. Don't blow your dollar, or look for that dollar, that almighty dollar, 15 cents. And please, consider your souls when you talk about what we're doing in the city. I say opt out. Watch out where we're going. We're not going to see any money for 20, 30 years, and then we're going to get 15% of 10% of 2% of 3%, which costs these guys more than that just to officiate. It's going to cost the police department and us eventually to get that done. Why? These people that are doing these drugs, legally or illegally, aren't doing us any favors when they're out there driving, when they're out there doing what they have to do to pay for it. They're not doing us any favors. Your job is dangerous enough without having to worry about guys on drugs out there. You know? Just think about it, guys. Don't give up my small city. I'm leaving my most prized possession behind. I have a grandson who lives in this city. I want him taken care of for the rest of his life or as long as he lives here. And if you guys do anything to jeopardize that, I'll come back here.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Bernadette Brock, resident here in Wayne. Bernadette Brock. Alfred had to leave, as you stated earlier, but he'd like me to pass on that on February 4th, the Families of Narcotics Against Narcotics Northwest Wayne chapter will be having a public forum on the new marijuana laws from 6:30 to 8:30 at Summit Parkway, at the Summit Parkway in Canton. They'll have a panel of experts, and it'll also allow people to get more information on this new law, thanks to our attorney giving it to us here, but it would also allow residents to voice some concerns and ask questions to the panel. One other thing, well, two things. I will say I support this method of changing our review of our charter. My family wants to volunteer again, and right now, the way the laws are, my family is not protected enough to be out here volunteering and having law enforcement and legal personnel tell me to stop volunteering to protect my children from harassment. Please, please look at those things. Those outdated laws are just ridiculous. Another thing is today, Ground Effects actually did their fire alarm, and we thought the neighbor's house was on fire, so of course all the neighbors dialed 911. With that in respect is we have a snowstorm coming this weekend, so if your fire hydrant is covered, please unshovel it, because that made me aware today, you know, where is a fire hydrant? How close is it to this big building? I actually went out and looked to see exactly where every fire hydrant was, because it went on for probably an hour and a half, off and on, off and on, off and on. So with that, if with the snowstorm, and check on your elderly neighbors, please. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I can't. Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Eric Clearman. I'm on Winifred Street. I want to thank the city for the opportunity to serve on the Parks and Trails Commission, and I want to let everybody know that Wayne County Parks is also having an issue right now where they're going to be selling a good portion of Heinz. There's a city council meeting at Livonia City Council's chamber tomorrow at 7 p.m. Warren Evans will be there to talk about their plans for the future of Heinz, and it's an open discussion, so anybody who wants to attend that, it's at 7 p.m. at 33,000 Civic Center Drive in Livonia, Michigan, at Livonia Council Chamber. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, let's move the agenda.
Items for next agenda.
Okay, go ahead and move the agenda.
Hearing none, comments from members of the City Council.
Councilman Miller.
Thank you, Mayor Racy. First of all, I just want to let everybody know that because of the government shutdown, that the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, which is referred to as SNAP, are going to be downloading the February funds into everyone's accounts. So I just wanted to let everyone know that, you know, getting to the grocery store, it's going to be a little bit busier. Getting on the roads during those prime times, it's going to be busier. And we're also going to be, we've been fortunate of the mild winter that we've had, and we are expected to receive 4 to 8 inches. So I would just ask to kind of prepare ahead a little bit, kind of make those arrangements so that you're not caught in that traffic jam or stuck in that grocery line, you know, all the way down aisle 7, and you'll understand why that's going on. Is because of the SNAP program funds are being downloaded. So if it may feel like Christmas, It's not. It's because of some other things going on. And also, there's nothing past tense about closure. And there's no one that wins in victimizing anybody in any report whatsoever. But there is a benefit of leadership of this council with the community in finding closure so that we can truly move forward together. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Councilman Dowd.
Yeah, I would first want to shine a light on our fire department. I live on Chamberlain, and there was a fire this weekend, and the team was there, and everybody was able to leave the home without harm, and to witness right 3 doors over across the block, see the effectiveness of our fire team was fantastic and reassuring, and I just want to say thank you to all in that capacity. Secondly, the police cams. I think that's a fantastic thing. It's just the state of the environment we're in. I work during the day for a trucking company and a logistics firm, and we have in our trucks the video cameras that both face forward and outward, where there's no liability or no insurance benefit. The cameras and the investment is paid for itself in limited or liability litigation avoidance in a case that probably would have cost the company $10 million in one accident, where without the cameras it would have been a different scene. So I think it's fantastic for our small environment to get with the times on this, and it should help the officers. Lastly, I just want to point over to our temporary city clerk for steering the boat and with confidence and experience. You're greatly appreciated, and we look forward to your guidance and support. And with that, I'll pass.
Councilman Wagner.
Just real quickly, I am going to the class, I believe it's entitled You're Elected, Now What? That's going to be held at the Michigan Municipal League in Ann Arbor, and very excited to go there and see what they have to say. Just also wanted to remind citizens that you know, the city is full of blighted property, and all of our departments are understaffed. If you see a property that you think needs attention, bring it to the city hall here. Just tell them, say, hey, there's this property, it's fallen apart, might be worth taking a look at, and they will definitely put it on the list. And lastly, as some others have stated, we're going to get some snow. It's going to get cold out. We've had a mild winter so far, but it's going to get cold. Please keep an eye out, especially for the elderly and those with dementia. It seems like every year we have a few cases in Southeast Michigan where somebody with dementia is left home alone, and they get out and they get lost in the cold, and the unmentionable happens. So please, just if you see someone out walking that looks like they need help, help them out. Call the police or something like that. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Skiff.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank our previous representative, Bob Kozlowski, for coming out tonight and giving the presentation. And I wanted to thank him for his hard work in the last 6 years, and especially the legislation that he worked on with the citizens in our city. I know that that was very exciting for us, and I know all those involved really enjoyed it. I also wanted to thank our finance team also for their hard work and their presentation tonight. Thank you for making that a very comprehensive presentation. I understood it, and it was very helpful to me as a new council member, so thank you very much. And I also wanted to just thank our law enforcement. January 9th was Law Enforcement Appreciation Day, and I just wanted to thank those in our city and law enforcement for their hard work day in and night, and for keeping us all safe. And I just wanted to, I don't think anything publicly was said about that, so I just wanted to publicly thank them. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. That's a great point. Councilman Webster.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to expand on something that City Manager Nasserini was talking about a little bit earlier, which is the Parks and Trails Committee. We've had two very good meetings so far since the start of the year. And I just wanted to let everybody know a little bit of what we're working on. As you know, we did work on the pavilions this past fall. We are going to be working on the remaining ones that we did not get to as soon as the weather breaks this coming year. We're also working on looking at the pavilion rentals and making sure that they're maintained, because we have heard some issues where people have rented them and they've shown up and people have either been in them or they are not in a condition that is suitable to have a party. So we're working on some issues to make sure when that does happen in the future that when you go and you have rented these out, they're going to be in a condition that is going to be amenable to have a party. We also did assign ambassadors to the Parks and Trails, and what we're going to be doing is going out to all these areas prior to our next meeting, which is going to be in February, and we're really going to be looking at everything, setting a list of things that need to be done, prioritizing and figuring out what we can do in this upcoming year. I know also, Lisa, you are working on getting the meetings put up on the board so people can attend future ones as well. So I would like everyone to come out and give your opinion, because we do have a lot to do in these parks, but I think we're really focused and we're going to get a lot done this year with help from the city. And we are going to be planning far ahead for some of these cleanups that we did this past year. I know we didn't always get out the kind of notice to get the turnout that we needed, but we are going to be planning out months ahead at this point, so be on the lookout for that. And lastly, I just want to say I've had some conversations this week with our interim city clerk and Ryan Strong, and just the professionalism that you both have displayed is absolutely fantastic. I mean, I'm proud to have you representing us, so thank you to both of you. That's it.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Just on a real quick note, I went to the State Representative Coleman's coffee hour. Kathy Rockwell and Vern Amos was also there. He did mention that he's going to have a coffee hour in February in the evening at the Tim Hortons on Michigan Avenue. So I'll give you the dates later on. I'm pretty sure it's February 28th, but I've got to get them for sure. And I think it was 6:30, but Kathy, can you tell me that? Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that's something you should look at attending. You know, talk to your state reps and tell them what we need. You know, we need some help, and sometimes our voices fall on deaf ears. So, more residents, the better. Let's flood Tim Hortons that night. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just have a few comments tonight. First off, I want to welcome you, Mike, and your firm. I'm excited to have you along as part of our team as the city attorney without the other piece of it. So I'm excited to have you. You've been great to work with so far, and look forward to working with you in the future. I also want to thank the staff that had the courage to come forward and talk to the council. We need to hear that kind of stuff. I hear that from other staff members all the time, and I appreciate you guys coming forward and talking to us. And then the last thing I want to talk about is I attended the CWW Conference of Western Wayne meeting, which is 18 of the Western Wayne communities from the cities to townships, and we convened. One of the things that came out of the meeting that was very interesting, that's going to be coming down the pike, is that recycling is going out the roof. We've kind of talked about that, but our city right now is in a really great position not having recycling at the curb. They're talking about raising it to $82 a ton, I believe it was, and people are paying $32 a ton for garbage. Other communities are scrambling to try to figure out how they're going to pay for this. China's not wanting to take the recyclables any longer, so it's a big mess. And recycling is going to be a topic you'll be starting to hear with other communities in the near future. I've got some information that either myself or I'll have the city manager pass along to everybody. I think that there's some valuable information that I want to pass along to the council from these meetings. We have some legislative updates, and some of the things that are in our minutes are very interesting. That are happening in Western Wayne County, but it affects our community and it affects the communities surrounding us. So I want to make sure that all you guys are aware of those things, and I think it'll help us do our jobs better for everybody. And with that, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
All in. Can I hold on 1 second? I'm sorry. She just asked if you could take the podium to that's a good I'm sorry.
Just a real quick public service announcement. Several members of council mentioned a snowstorm this weekend. As far as snow emergency, I would just ask residents not to wait. If they know there's a big snow coming, get their vehicles off of the street. It makes Mr. Queen's and his employees' job much easier. It makes our job much easier. Once a snow emergency is declared and you're on the street, we can ticket you and eventually tow. But obviously that's not what we want to do. It's a lot easier if everyone can just get their car off the street before the snow gets here. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you for giving me this information. And we have you got them? Yep. But you have the two. You know who they are. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.